Morning everyone. I painted this dandelion yesterday and I found these ones in my garden. They are little seeds and I thought this will make a beautiful painting. So I decided to get out my paint. I found some paper that I bought recently. It is Bockingford 300 grams. It is quite a rough paper, so it's not my normal smooth hot press watercolor paper. Lovely paper for sketches and landscapes and loose watercolors. And what I did is I just painted some stems. I'm going to paint 2 of these seeds. So I started off with 1. At first I was only going to paint the 1, but then I decided it looks a little bit lonely, so I'm going to paint another one. So I just used the transparent yellow that I have in a different little plate there, because I don't want it to be messed up with all of my other paints that I have on my palette there. And then I mixed it with the transparent yellow and some sap green. And all I did was create these little strokes. Loose strokes. This is going to be a very loose painting. These are fun for when you only have 10 minutes, and this video literally is about 10 minutes long. I want to add some burnt umber with a mix of Payne's grey just on the edges of some of these little tips of the green parts. But I just want to darken these leaves first. So just go over it while it's a little bit wet. And I only went on the one side of the leaf that I painted so that I can create a whiter or lighter section and then a darker section. This is the burnt umber mixed with a bit of Payne's grey, and I want to keep it light, and then I will go back a little bit darker at a later stage. I use the tip of my brush just to drop in some of the burnt umber Payne's grey mix on the edges or tips of the leaves. And then I just go back and darken the center of the dandelion. This is the mix I'm going to use now, and I use a very sharp point brush. So this is the Da Vinci brush. It has a very nice tip, and I draw these tiny little feathery hairs. Very light, you can hardly see them, but I will go over and over and over and create hundreds of them with the tip of my brush. Very light strokes. And I use a very watery mix because I don't want them to be too dark, and I practice them on a piece of paper before I do it on my painting so that I don't mess it up. They are very fine little hairs. I use a paper just to turn my brush on the paper to create a rounded tip, and then I go back and pick up some more color. So I use the palette, and every time I pick up some of the paint I just roll my brush in the pigment so that I have a beautiful nice tip on my brush. Now I'm painting those little fine little hairs or edges of the hairs that I painted. I don't know what you call them, but there are hundreds of tiny little hairs on those little seed pods. I love these little flowers in the garden. They always brighten my day. They are the most beautiful yellow, and then I leave them to have their moment in the sun, and then it becomes this beautiful seed pod. Again, I will go back over with a darker mix of the Payne's grey just to darken certain sections again with a nice tip. So find one of your brushes that has a very nice fine tip. If you use a brush with a rounded tip, it will create thick lines, and you don't want that. So now I'm just darkening all those little sections on the edges. And this is such a fun study. I want to paint hundreds of them on a piece of paper. And then I just go back and darken some of the centerpieces, and I paint some of those little hairy bits on in the middle of the seed pod as well, to make it look a little bit more realistic. I still want to keep it very loose, so I'm very careful not to add too much detail. For this I want to keep it very loose and simple. And now I'm decided I'm going to paint another one, because like I said in the beginning, it looked a little bit lonely on the sheet of paper, so I decided we need to paint another one. So this is going to be from the back of the dandelion, and you will see I just painted quick loose leaves again, and then those little hairy bits. Quick brush strokes. I'm not going to fuss with the things too much. I'm going to use a bit of the burnt umber with Payne's grey mix for the center of this flower here, or the seed pod. Used to be a flower. I want some of that dark mix on the tips again. Again, the dark umber Payne's grey mix. I want to darken this section. And I decided just to darken the green parts. So the Sap Green mixed with some of the transparent yellow, or this is the nickel Azo Yellow from Core Watercolours. And then I start with those little fine hairs everywhere. I just pull them from all over, so they will look like you turn the flower around and you see the back of this beautiful seed pot. So fine brush strokes, fine little hairs. I think you can use a pencil if you are too scared to use a brush. I might try that next time. I think a nice soft pencil will work very well as well. And then there are those fine little hairs on each of those little hairs that I painted. So it's like, I'm not sure, like I said, what you call that. I will actually have to look and see what you call that. But there are thousands of tiny little feathery strokes on each edge or tip of those little hairs that I just painted. And I think the two seed pots on this page look very nice. I'm going to cut them out and laminate them for a bookmark. I also want to paint one of these little seeds. It looks like that I want it to look like it's falling, and then one on the bottom where the stems end. So I'm going to create that as well. I think it will give it a little bit of interest, make it look a bit more interesting, not so boring. So again, I'll just go back over with a darker mix on my brush, and this time the pigment's a little bit thicker but still light enough so that I can create these beautiful feathery strokes on each tip of the seed pod. My hand's a little bit in the way, but it is because it's so tiny. So the Payne's grey I think work very well with some umber, and now I want to darken the center, because eventually all of those little seed pods will fall off and then only the stem will be left with those green parts. Darken those little leaves again, and then I just add a few extra ones where I think it needs some. And this is how far we are right now. I'm going to just darken the stem, and now I want to go back in and darken a few more of those little fluffy bits on the edges of those hairy stems that I painted. I will really have to look what it is, what they call that. So I'm going to add the one right here. I want it to look like it's falling, because they keep on falling off until there's nothing left. And we are nearly finished, so we're just over 10 minutes. Like I said, we want to keep these little studies short and sweet. Now these little paintings are so quick and easy and so fun that even my daughters that never painted in watercolor can paint them, and they literally take a few minutes of your time. So it's very relaxing and fun to paint. You can use your children's paint that you used to have from school, that you still have left over, that you stored in a cupboard just in case you might need them one day. So take them out, get some cotton paper, watercolor cotton paper. You know, this is painted on very rough paper, and I can still paint it very easily, whereas on my flower paintings that I normally paint, I prefer to use very smooth hot press watercolor paper. But for these studies, this is perfect. And here we are, the finished dandelion painting. Quite fun and easy to paint. I hope you enjoyed this. Please subscribe if you don't want to miss out on any of my future tutorials. Have a nice day.